And so I just want y'all to give him respect in his kindness, and we appreciate you coming out.
So my name is Ryan. I was born and raised here. My father was born and raised here. He went to Jefferson. I went to Grant. My parents met as teachers, and they met at Sabin. My first incident with gun violence was as a freshman at Grant High School. On Thursday, April 30th, 1987, a sophomore classmate of ours, Jerry Peanut Sandals, shot Gilbert Bobo Miles in front of about 40 people. You know, we came out of Center Hall thinking we were going to see a fight, and what we saw was gun violence, and it was very traumatic. Not too much longer after that, I'm going to talk about 3 of my teammates that passed from gun violence. They were taken violently. They were great teammates. They were supportive of me on the field. They were supportive of me off the field. They stuck up for me, and I need to, recognize them. The first is David Calamafoni. November 28, 1988, he was killed over between 17th and 18th on Northeast Holman, and he was 17 years old, and that remains unsolved. That's a murder that hasn't been solved. My next teammate is Mucha Dudley, and he was killed just over on Northeast 15th in Alberta, and he was 18 years old, and this was December of 1990, first week. The next teammate of mine, he was a locker partner of mine in middle school and in high school. It was John Edward Frater Jr., and he was gunned down in a Safeway parking lot over on Ainsworth, and he was just 21 years old. And one of the main reasons I'm here, not because of just that, but July 12th, a friend of mine, close friend of mine that was like family, that I mentored when he was young, tried to get him on the right path, but we couldn't do it, was gunned down, and also another form of gang violence, July 12th, 2021, over on 2307 Southeast Chestnut Street, and he was 41 years old. So I've been affected directly and indirectly, and I can't imagine being a family member and having to go through some of the things people have to go through, having to see things people have to go through. And, a lot of these murders don't get solved. A lot of justice is not provided to the families. And another thing I'm kind of angry about is I don't see a lot of our elected officials really doing or taking any real initiatives to what we're doing. I just want to hit on a couple of things, just to ask you a couple of things to think about. Is we live in a city where we're governed by commissioners that are elected at large, which means over there in outer East Portland, where we're having all this violence daily. It seems like 3-4 shootings a daily out on the east side. There's nobody that lives in that community that's representing that community. There's somebody that lives outside of that community representing that community. And that's how part of our government system works. We don't have districts. We just have general elections, and commissions are appointed. They're not, you don't have to have experience to be appointed to the Water Bureau or the Fire, the Police Department, or any of those things. When we talk about change, something has to happen systemically. And being in the position where I am, I'm a small business owner, and I have a place where I can say something and think about things. It's important for me, if we're going to invest in a community, that somebody that lives in that community speaks up for that community and fights for that community, because I know living where I live, it's easy to just watch the news and say, hey, it's not happening in my neighborhood. It's not happening in my neighborhood, I don't have to worry about it. But I have a lot of friends that live in a lot of places, so I do worry about it. And the first thing is we need people in the community that live in the community, that's leadership that can fight for that community. And so not having districts is a real disadvantage for us and getting things done. Also, I don't want to talk too negatively about the police, but it's hard when only 18% of the police force live in the city limits of Portland and don't live in the communities that they're protecting and serving. I think that would be something that would be important for change, to build trust and rapport, so we can work on prevention instead of enforcement, so we can work on things and then taking action instead of reacting. 18%. 18%. You guys can look it up, it's there. We have more police officers living in the state of Washington, policing Portland, than we have police officers in Portland, policing Portland. And I think you've got to have boots on the ground. So you've got to have people living in your community that have that badge on, that protect and serve, that can create that rapport, that can create that trust, that can identify disadvantaged youth and reach them and try to put them on a different path before they get down a path and it becomes too late. They just get down a path and it just becomes too late. And we focus so much more on enforcement than we do putting our resources into prevention. And we need people to do that. And it doesn't matter if they have a badge on, they're going there to protect and serve, not necessarily to just enforce. And the last thing I want to hit on is just gentrification. My business is on 13th in Alberta, and just in the last 2 years, I've seen more gentrification in the last 2 years than the first 2 years. And for me, the city council and commissioners make all the decisions on who builds where and who does what and what tax breaks they get and everything else. They have that much power. It's crazy to think about. But I don't understand why you can't invest more into the community that's there than displace them and bring somebody else in. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's not serving your community, that's not serving your constituents, that's just following the money. I want to thank you guys for your time. Some of this is political and obviously, a lot of it has to do with gun violence. And I look at the situations, the environments that we're put in, and it has a lot to do with the leadership and what they provide for us. And they're not providing, they're not in the community, they don't live in the community. Their boots aren't on the ground. They're watching it from afar. It's too easy to dismiss it, to watch from afar, because when you're in the midst, you're in the community, you fight for it. And we need our leaders to fight for it. So, just a thought. If there's a way we can get a bunch of people together and start holding people accountable, it's something to think about. Thank you.
I didn't want to interject until actually about an hour ago, me and Ryan were talking. Come here, Ryan. And part of the reason that Ryan is important is the first 3 people on Ryan's list of those homicides that impacted him. That first one was Gilbert Bolo Miles. That was my partner. We played with each other. We ran the streets at Alberta Park. That was the first time I ever got a call. And it wasn't a call. Somebody ran from Grant High School to where I was at Benson High School to say, your homeboy just got killed. That second person, David Callum McConey, that night, that party he was killed at, we were there together. I had just left and said, bro, I'm finna go get something to eat at McDonald's for us so we can leave here, because we didn't want him at that party at night in the first place. The time it took me to go from 17th and Holman to McDonald's on Swan Island to back, he had been shot several times. The time it took me to get from there to Emmanuel Hospital, by the time they opened the door, we found out he was dead. The third person, Mujib Dudley, same thing, partners, ran with me and David. We were all partners. We actually shared the same birthday. I was just born 1 year to a day before him. That day, he got murdered. Somebody ran in the gym because I was a student at PCC. Jeff might have been there with me to tell me, hey, they just killed your homeboy up on 15th in Alberta. Now, the thing is this. When you walk the streets of Portland, you know that shit happened to me. You don't know that shit happened to him, too. And that's why, for me, this is bigger than just gun violence. Because if we make it about gun violence, imagery and media will make it about black boys with guns. What we're talking about is the loss of human life for no good reason. And that has no color. It has no ethnicity. Sometimes it has the same zip code. Sometimes it don't. But as you see, whatever the complexion or hair or lack of hair, it impacts everybody. And so, because I want to honor my dude, because like I said, I met Ryan totally disconnected from this. So we know other people that are friends. I enjoy coming to his yoga spot because I enjoy that we share values, we share interests. I just never knew the depth of what we share till today. And I want to make sure as we highlight this issue, we take it away from color. Because again, one of the reasons I started this is domestic violence has no color. Intimate partner violence has no color. Community violence has no color. Hate didn't have a color, and 70% of the time in Oregon, that color is black. But it can be because of your orientation, your expression, your political belief, whatever. And we all, no matter how we look similar or dissimilar, have to all unify that that's unacceptable. So, that's my soliloquy. Thank you for putting up with me for a second. Back to the regular scheduled program.
No program. You can speak all you want.